So, hello again, everyone. Today, after let's just say a bit of a long hiatus, unintentionally, but also because of how worldly events have been taking, we're back today, finally, for a new episode of the Otaku Topic podcast. My name is Jake, as usual, and we have our co-star who's has something, a bit of an announcement to those who don't know.
Yeah. So if y'all don't follow me on my music side, I used to go by DJ Mike CW. I go by Mike Shift now. That's Mike Shift with the exclamation mark for the I
Mhm.
in Shift. And I
Mhm.
decided to just kind of like do a soft, just rename and rebrand and kind of like as I've grown in my music and stuff like that. So excited! You're gonna hear me saying it's your boy Mike Shift. That's gonna take some getting used to, but it is what it is.
All right, nice. So, just before we get into the episode, just a few quality of life things. So, as you guys might be able to tell when this is uploaded and recorded, it's a little different. Our setup, we now have faces. We've done that once before, but not quite like this. So, we're testing some new things out. We're trying to get better at our end on recordings, and just bear with us if it's horrible. Sorry, but I think we'll both agree that it'll hopefully get better as we go.
In the long run.
In the long run, yes. So today we're gonna be talking about my favorite. I'm not even gonna say manga. Like, just as a story, like, it's just my favorite story ever written. Uh, I'm a huge fanboy. Today we're talking about Berserk, which again is amazing. And if you haven't already decided to look at it, please go ahead and do so. Like, it is one of those things that if I had to give you one anime to watch, it wouldn't be Berserk. But if I had to give you one manga to read, it would be Berserk. That being said, the anime. We'll get into why I say that. The anime that we're talking about, however, which is the 1997 adaptation, is quite good, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. Um, starting with Mike, who is actually new to the series. So, do you want to go into that? How you discovered it and came to me about wanting to talk about it?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, of course when me and Jacob met, I think he actually like talked my ear off about this anime for like 3 hours. I was like, dang. But I'm like, yeah,
Um,
like that does seem like something interesting to watch. And then I just kind of like, I put it in the back burner because it was just like so much anime and so much life happenings going to college. I think it was like the summer before I went to college and everything. So it was a lot of stuff, music and stuff like that. But like eventually, oh, let me turn myself down on the recording. But yeah, excuse me. Eventually, I decided to check it out with what you call it? Because I was watching some YouTuber. I can't remember his name. I would give him a shout out, but he was talking about Devilman and what you call it
Mhm.
Fist of the North Star,
Fist
and
of
he
North.
was talking about
Mhm.
like the influence that it had on like the creator of Berserk and stuff like that. And I was like,
Mhm.
you know what? I do kind of want to watch Fist of the North Star. I'm like, yeah, and I was like, well, Jacob likes Berserk. And I'm like, we ought to talk about Berserk.
Mhm.
And I'm inspired by this to do this Berserk podcast, a Berserk version podcast series. I don't want to say like because I don't. I'm too lazy. I'm too lazy to make its own separate thing. But like it's a conjunction. It's a series in conjunction. But yeah, similar to what Next Taco and them were doing with the Dragon Ball version and the One Piece version. So I was like this probably be a cool idea. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like yeah, I kind of wanted to check out the series, and this be I watched a couple. This probably be like my second anime that's like real mature in themes and stuff like that. So this will be fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll say this. Um, like you said, there's a lot of influence from Berserk. It also influences a lot of things. So I think it's actually a really good thing you're watching it because I think you'll notice a lot more references than a lot of other things. Because Berserk is, I think it's over 20 years old now. It's getting kind of old. It's still not finished. I'll talk about that. But I mean, it's such a great story, and like you can tell that a lot of artists have taken influence from it. But I think definitely the genius yes, I'm gonna praise it this much. The genius that it is comes, nothing is original, if that makes any sense. So I think
Yeah,
definitely you can find influences in Berserk itself, and that's awesome. I think that anything, I think that in today's modern anime age, this is kind of off topic, but in today's modern anime age, we always talk about, oh, this isn't original, so it's bad. I mean, like, look at Jujutsu no Kaisen. That, I don't think that's like, what is it, the really overpowered white haired guy. He's literally just Kakashi but reversed. But
yeah.
he's like the coolest freaking character ever because he's executed so well. So, anyways, little
Right.
side rant there.
Man, you making me
So-
want to watch Jujutsu now.
Oh, you haven't watched it? Oh my goodness,
I have.
dude.
I'm on like episode 5, but it's still more episodes, and I'm glad I got like
Gotcha.
I get like a chunk to watch. Cause
I'm just waiting for the anime to go through its cycle so I can start, because I don't want to like read the manga and then leave, like, it's never as good when you've read the manga before you watch the anime, because then you're like, I know it's coming. But I'm definitely gonna read the manga after the anime starts. It seems so good. Anyways, back onto what the topic at hand was. So we were gonna, I guess what we talked about when we were kind of talking about, like, okay, so how should we do this? Berserk is like, really, like I said, it's 20 years old, and while it's only like 300, and I think it's a chapter 348 right now. Don't at me. It is, it's not the longest. It's not a One Piece, but it still has 20 years of content. So there's a lot to talk about. So what we decided on is to split this up. We're gonna talk about in pieces, and right now we have 3 parts in mind. That being what would be episode 1 through 14, then episodes 15 through 22, I think was,
yeah.
and then 23 to the last episode, which is 25, which we're gonna do live. I think that's the only thing you haven't seen so far, right? It's 23
Yep.
through 25. Yeah.
Yep.
So then I have a big reason for that when we do our live, and we're just gonna record ourselves both watching it live, and I'm gonna comment as Mike is watching it, and just me, because that's a super important part of the anime, and it's super influential, and I can't wait for him to see why. That being said, this is part 1 of, again, a part 3 series that might have more parts after 3 if we dive into the manga, but we'll see how that goes. All right, so part 1, episode 1. So, the thing I want to talk to you about, I think you noticed the first episode was quite a bit different from the ones that followed. What's your opinion on that? What did you kind of infer from all that?
Okay, so yeah, like a lot more chaos going on. It seems like with Berserk kind of living in this real dark, messed up world. And I guess you can really compare that to Fist of the North Star, like this just post apocalypse almost, and it's But he saved this girl from did the anime trope where it's like, oh, these bad guys, they're being bad, they about to do something with the woman, and like, oh, and the good steps in like, not today. But
yeah, so actually, okay, so I want to talk to you about that scene. So what I find interesting about that scene, right, is usually that trope is bad guys, guy saves the day, he's a hero. Would you call Guts, the main character, a hero?
Not per se. I feel like he's a person that uses violence to survive, and it just so happens that sometimes it'll do redemptive or heroic things, but but I feel like that's just what he knows, like a person that does carpentry. It's just what, maybe like one that came from a family of carpenters. Like this,
it's just a life.
Yeah, and I feel like this just how it is for him. Not even that it's per se evil, but it's just that's all he knows. He don't know nothing else. They tried to show Drake reference. Okay.
So you're kind of getting into one of my favorite scenes there, but that comes later, and we'll talk about that. But
I tried not to like go in like.
No, I got you. We'll get into that. We'll get into that though. But that's actually, I think, will be the end of part 1. I think is what that, because that's like episode 14, I think. But anyways. The reason I asked that, because I think it's clear, especially in the manga, and that's one thing I want to like kind of talk about is some differences in the manga. So the manga does a little bit of a better job at making you go, okay, this guy's probably not a good person. Like, yeah, he saves people, but it's not really because he's on like this justice and righteous path. In fact, it makes it pretty clear that he's doing this for vengeance because he like hates these demons, right? He's not really good, but he kind of through his actions, because he's fighting against the true evil, he is kind of this anti-hero, which I don't really think that's the best way to put it, but that's kind of what he is. Now, in the manga, like I said, it does a much better job. So there's two things I'm gonna talk about that the manga did different, right? The first scene, like the very first scene in the manga, is an explicit scene with guts and a woman, right? And you're like, oh wow, so that's pretty. Well, here's the thing, that Whammon turns out to be a demon. And she's like, "Oh, I've got you. I'm gonna kill you." He just freaking blasts her. He freaking kills her. And it's like, I think, at first you're like, "Wow, that was kind of edgy," but when you read it like 7 or 8 times, like me, when you read the manga like 7 or 8 times, I think I realized the reason why the author does that is to just show you, wow, this guy probably isn't the best person. So basically, what I'm saying here for the audience.
So it's implied that. I'm sorry.
No. Basically, what I'm saying here for the audience is Guts does not start off as a good person, and that's important. So you were saying?
I would just say it. So it was implied that he knew she was a demon beforehand.
Yeah, and he still did it. So. Yeah. Kind of tells you how he was, but anyways, yeah. Looking back on it, not his best moment, but that's the point. Basically, I think the genius of the first episode is it starts Guts off at his worst as just a character, as a person, and I'll get into why I love that so much. So moving on, right? Pretty, he kills the big demon guy. First episode trope stuff. You get the point. Then we move on to, I think, the end of episode 1 into the beginning of episode 2, right? So what's different?
Of course, we're in this more. I guess you could say that the future part was medieval, but it just feels like more. Of course, not light, but just choices than what was in the.
So we kind of go from a dark medieval fantasy to like just a medieval story, you would say.
Yeah, just like it seems like almost normal, except there's this like 10-year-old on like a mercenary that's just killing it. But other than that, just basic.
I love telling people that unless you're, Guts, Berserk is really realistic unless you're part of the Band of the Hawks. in which case, you're just kind of a superhuman, but whatever.
Yeah.
But even then, well, I'll get into that. But yeah, so it goes pretty dark instantly into this, still war and stuff, but there's not like as much monsters and stuff. It's more realistic, which is a little more, compared to where we were, it was a lot more light, right? So, anyways, we go from, Guts being this masculine, brooding, kind of mean person to what is he in the second episode? What surprised you there?
This kid that's afraid. It's like, dad's just like whooping on him. I wouldn't say it surprised me per se because I'm just kind of used to like, how the character develops a little bit. So. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it is kind of a cool artistic decision to just be like, okay, here's this tough guy, and here's him at a weaker point, at a more vulnerable point in his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, obviously the main character Guts is, he's a teenager fighting like, killing these big old mercenaries. So obviously he's not bad, but I mean it's still a deadly life he lives, and that's really interesting. So, moving on from there, right, to that contrast, what did you think of when what I'll call the 3 main characters of the story were introduced? That being, obviously, Guts, the, like, main guy, but then Griffith and Casca, right? To me, those are pretty much the highlight characters of the entire story. There's some really important characters that come later on that have just as much an impact to the plot and whatnot. But the story kind of centers around their conflicts and their and how they go about their lives. So we kind of talked about Guts a little bit, and we're going to talk about him a lot more because he's the main character. But with the first introduction of Griffith, before just thinking about when he's first introduced, what did you think?
I think he was like kind of like the Sas. He was gonna be probably like the Sasuke, the guy that just has it together, the guy that's just like yeah,
Yeah.
and the girls like him. I mean, well, it's hard to say, but I could just tell like he was kind of like a charismatic person that like his group
Mhm.
looked up to and stuff like that, and it was just I was like he's probably gonna be this kind
Well,
of
he
like
he
like
almost
maybe
comes off as perfect,
yeah,
right?
and it almost seems like
I
Guts
mean,
is
think
gonna be like kind of. It almost seems like Guts gonna have that jealous dynamic, but it is. I don't think it really goes there.
not really. And there's something I want to talk about, and I love how I have my poster behind me for this because if we take a look at Guts and Griffith as a character, right? Guts Griffith, right?
Yeah,
The really cool thing is, I mean, if you just look at their designs, there's a huge contrast, right? Guts is super masculine. He has a lot of dark tones, and he's a super like intimidating character, right? Whereas Griffith is literally the biggest like contrast from him. He's honestly really feminine, light in his color scheme, and he's graceful, right? And I think that's really cool to have that like distinction between the main characters, because one, it's just a visually pleasing element, but it also tells you a lot about them and like how they are. But also, it's really cool because despite these contrasts, as we'll see, their bond is pretty develops really amazingly within the story. It kind of goes against what you would expect.
yeah. Most like I didn't really know what to expect, but I have my like intuition
Mhm.
like about what's gonna go down, but I'll try to
As we
I'll
get to
try to
the end
miss.
of part 3, I'll tell you something, and if you felt your intuition now, the manga would make you feel a lot more about your intuition. That's all I'm gonna say. um, the manga. Okay, so one thing I'll talk about real fast now that I think about it before we go into Casca. So one other difference in the manga that the anime doesn't cover, right? The anime actually skips like I think like 12 chapters or so. Again, don't at me. It skips quite a large chunk of content because we go from the future to the past, right? Um, but there's a lot more in the future arc, I guess you could call it, the Black Swordsman arc, that's not covered before he gets to the Golden Age arc. He actually goes and like fights more demon things before you go back. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I'm not gonna say what it spoils or whatever. But there's like the manga just completely spoils with good reason exactly like how things are gonna go. Like if you read the manga, you're like, oh, I just went back in time, but I already know what it's leading to. But I actually think that's genius, and I'll talk about that probably in the later episode or whatever. But yeah, so Casca, what do you think? She just the regular female character, or is she a bit
I feel
more?
yeah okay, so yeah, I do kind of see like she's trying to prove herself a little bit, and understandably so, like with the time that she's living in the story. And like I said, I don't know how this compares to like our world, like our history and stuff like that. But it was interesting to like kind of see like that dynamic, like they didn't delve into like her like being a woman in like this so-called man's world until like later in the story. But I
Mm-hmm.
can still tell.
I think
I
like
can tell
episode
some.
12
Yeah,
was when that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but like also like interesting enough, like she almost gets like this. She basically is the one that gets this like jealousy dynamic, and I could tell early on like how like why or what's going on, and I almost like it is almost not in the way that I would expect, but I think it was kind of. I think it was more friendship than just wanting to be, you know, her
Yeah,
wanting to be
yeah, yeah.
Griffith's girlfriend. I think it
I
was
think
just
I
fun to
think
be.
I think it's a little bit of both. She admired him so much, but obviously I think she did like have that love for him. Which like that's one thing we'll talk about probably later. Is I think one thing Berserk does it really well is it handles some really not like I don't when I say adult I don't mean that in a bad way, but it handles some adult themes like really well, like like how weird love can be, how horrible the world can be, but also how amazing like people can be. So anyways, rant. Yeah, so I really liked her, right? And I still really like her to this day, because I think she has a lot of growth in her character, and her character does a lot for the story. In fact, obviously, like Guts and Griffith are gonna have the most impact on the story, as like because she kind of takes a sideline, if we're gonna be honest, compared to what they do. Just because Guts is the main character and Griffith is like the super amazing person that everyone loves, right?
Yeah,
But I still think that her role in the story is the most important, especially like when we get later on. Like, if she wasn't in the story, um, like the main purpose of some of the things that are going on would not be there. In fact, well, I can't say anymore without spoilers, but she's still important. She's also such a good character. She grows a lot, and I like how I like how the author has taken like the fact that she's a woman in this like medieval society and like but still made her like such a strong because obviously like Guts is super strong because he's the main character, blah, blah, blah. And Griffith is like the super cool guy. But like I mean, if we're gonna be honest, if you take like any average soldier and fight and put them against Kasha, she's gonna kick their ass.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, it's not some. Yeah, I didn't really think about it, but she is like a really capable fighter.
I don't think there's a really weak character as far as the main cast goes. I think so far in the story, it's really strong, and I think as we can like go on and talk about their dynamics and their growth, it's really interesting to consider. But moving on from them, so I didn't want to take a second to kind of pick the topic against them. Let's talk about how the story progresses, right? So we go from Guts joining the Band of the Hawk for reasons that we'll keep a little vague, so people can that haven't quite watched it yet can find out. So he joins the Band of the Hawk. So I think is it right after that his backstory gets told, right, in the anime?
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that's something I want to talk about. So in the manga, it goes straight from the future arc into like it kind of goes chronological from once it gets to Golden Age. So you actually start with his backstory. What did you think? Okay, so after seeing Guts in episode 1 and kind of like kind of going like this guy's not great. Once you found out about his backstory, what did you think?
Yeah, I think it really contextualized like why he does what he does, why he thinks how
Hmm.
he thinks. But just like
Hmm.
the trauma, like I mean, I kind of like thinking of like the psychology stuff like that, like the trauma he's faced, the
Hmm.
messages, the only messages he's been hearing from his father is like just teaching how to fight, and then when tragedy happens, it's like some angst from
Hmm.
that and stuff like that, and so
And
that kind of explains him well. I think,
mhm.
and I feel like
And it gives a lot of context to why he is like he is, right? Because for example, in episode 1, when that guy tries to like recruit him, he's like, "Don't touch me," blah blah blah, and for good reason. I mean, the what he went through is pretty bad. Now, here's one thing I'm going to share with you to give a little more context to that scene. The manga skipped something about his backstory that the anime skipped something about his backstory that I kind of disagree with them skipping, because I don't really see why they skipped it. I mean, I guess because it's a little maybe it's too much of a dark topic for them to touch on. But I think the story covers it in other places. Guts goes through a sexual abuse by
wow.
I'm not gonna that's all I'm gonna say. I won't point any spoil, but he goes through sexual abuse, and like why he goes through it is really messed up. Like, oh my goodness, it's horrible. And I don't understand why they didn't cover that in the anime.
I
To
think
me, it
in
was
the
too
anime
important.
they really tried to like tone down any type of like rape situations and stuff, and understandably, but it was
Mhm,
like I mean
mhm.
it's a sad part, but it is something that people go through.
And that's actually something I'll talk about. So, like, sexual trauma, sexual abuse is like a lot of that takes place in the story because it's a seinen, it's a really adult story, right? And
Yeah,
that's actually been a big criticism of Berserk, especially as we get into some of the later parts, like in the middle of the story when it gets like really dark. Uh, my here's what I have to say to that. I understand, right? Obviously, like that's not something that should be like taken lightly, right? And it's a horrible thing. However, I think the author doesn't do it with distaste. There's a lot of stories that like I just go there and I'm like, wow, this just kind of messed. Like I remember sort of online, like at the end of the Elf arc, when all that stuff was going on, I was like, this is just kind of messed up. Like this really need to be here. But I think with like Berserk never like It never fantasizes it. It just keeps it real and dark. Like you never go there and like, oh wow, this is like some weird um fetishization. No, it's what it is. It's horrible. And it's not like it's not like targeting any characters in specific. It's just something that like is in the world because that's what the world is. And so I actually really think that what the author is doing is not trying to make light of it, but to make it more of a serious topic and involves these realistic things in this story. So anyways, that's all I'm going to talk about.
Right.
So now that we go from there, we got Guts. We're learning more about Guts and the thing, but the Band of the Hawk, right? So what do you think about the I guess you could say the main cast of characters being the Band of the Hawk in part 1?
Yeah. Okay. So okay. Yeah. I feel like a good rowdy bunch of good like each one has their little gimmick, I guess. But I feel like they're very like in the background, really. Like it's hard to like it's almost funny. Like the one that stands out to me is the one that's voiced by Sean Sherman. He's not even a main Hawk guy. He's just he's just the background.
Yeah,
I could just tell Goku's voice. I'm like, oh,
this
this Goku's
Goku. I thought the exact same thing when that's funny. Correction, by the way, there's 363 chapters.
I got you.
So that people who at me can't at me anymore. But yeah. So that I actually have a funny little question for you. With that being said, who was your favorite side, like not important Band of the Hawk character? Like with Rickard and all that. Was there one in particular that you liked?
It's hard like because they're really like they hardly get those standout moments. I guess I like the big guy because he just be chilling in the cut.
Yeah,
like,
Pippin or something.
Yeah, like with this, they're just real quiet. Like he just be chilling. I don't know.
I think Jada, how you say his name is, the guy that has like the throwing knives. Such a cool character.
Yeah, I think
like
that's
blonde
cool,
ponytail.
like,
He's like such a cool character, and I think when we watch the last few episodes, you're gonna like him even more. He's the greatest. No, that being said, what is it? There's also one other. What's his name? Rickard. He's like the young one. He's gonna become kind of important, which is just funny because he's like this little an innocent, naive kid in the Band of the Hawk. Not too more. He's still in the war and stuff, but I think you'll really like how his character. Like when you go and read the manga, I think you'll really like how his character develops. That's all I'll say there. But anyways,
it's weird though. Like I didn't pick up like the fact that he was because I had him like I said, to me they were really in like the background. I don't know if the manga really like brought them out better, but like
they are still always kind of a little bit in the background.
I'm not gonna lie. Like I had them confused with the knife guy because they were both blonde. I'm like, it's
okay.
I'm like, oh, there's two blondes. But but it was.
What about Corcus though? The freaking jerk guy.
Yeah, they got to. Yeah.
I don't like Guts because he's cooler than me. It's basically his character.
I mean, yeah, but that's all you need.
I actually like his character though, just because it's always good to have one character like that you can hate on. Yeah. But I think we'll see how you feel about that later. Anyways. Just funny thing. I just want to get your opinion quick on some of the more important ones. So as we go through the story, we got them. He's in the Band of the Hawk. He joins them because reasons. What do you think about Griffith's leadership?
Yeah, I feel like he's somebody that has like I don't know since like I said he's very charismatic for lack of a better word. I wouldn't say like he talks kind of gracefully and like. I don't feel like he's just like joking and cracking jokes because when I think of charismatic, I usually think of somebody that's kind of like joke can crack jokes and kind of like get the room going and stuff. But I mean, like in a sense of like charismatic, is like he has this grandiose aura in the story, and that people like really like him. He's really a likable person, and but yeah, I feel like he also has a lot of faith in his, if I'm not mistaken, has a lot of faith in like his crew. I never really thought about like how he relates to the Hawks himself. I just know he really cared about like his most valued his most value? Like, or do you want to wait for
So
part two to kind of deal with it?
that's more of a part two topic, but I think you can kind of expand like basically like as far as part one, you think like would you just say he's really charismatic and like you can see why he's the lead of this and like why they're so successful because of him?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, pretty much.
I think yeah, I think the I think that definitely gives a lot of context to that. I think I mean personally the reason I like the thing I like about part one, right, that I find really interesting is the fact that these characters that it almost diverts your expectations a little bit because when Guts first joins Band of Hawk, it's not on the best terms, right? But then like not even that much longer, you get the freaking scene where they're like both naked throwing water at each other. You know what I'm talking about? And
Yeah,
it's like it's these really like it's these really like innocent moments in between these battles that like really make the story not like better or like more interesting, but like just feel more in depth.
robust.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's not just this sad war story. It people like the first couple of chapters like this is just an edgy story. But once you get that context, you really you realize the humanity that takes place in the story, right?
right.
And not to spoil, but to completely spoil Berserk to everyone, Berserk's main idea is humanity, right? Uh, like I mean, think about it. I'm gonna put this in people's heads because I think this is something people should consider as they read the story. Berserk starts off at Guts' worst moment as a human, but I think as you watch and read it, he only becomes better. Yes, there's moments where he's gonna like in any good story, there's moments where like there's gonna be moments of fall and like failure, but really the story is a in-depth look at like what it means to become a better person, what it means to be human, and what it means to and the antithesis of that too. Like what does it mean to like to lose your humanity, to like go against it and to become like a worse person, if that makes any sense. And that is the beauty of Berserk in my opinion. Anyways, there's my message. Save the world. But but yeah, so I think moving on from there, we have Griffith as the leader. We can both agree he's a pretty good leader. So what are some other moments in part one you specifically found interesting?
um, so like I said, it's kind of not as fresh on my mind because part two, I just finished part two like 2 minutes, 20,
Mm-hmm.
30 minutes ago.
So,
But
so to give you some context, part two ended with Guts's like big like conversation with Casca on top of the hill before he goes down to go with with the Band of the Hawk, which is like my favorite, probably one of my favorite moments in the story of all time, but probably like my second or third favorite in the Golden Age is that moment. Then to like some other things, there's Zod. I think that's something big we should talk about. If you do you remember who
Zod,
that is?
that's
The
the one that's like real the goofy commander guy.
Zod is the yeah. So Zod is the guy that they fight, that Guts and Griffith fight in the basement, who turns into a
Oh, okay.
demon.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's that
yeah,
wild, and it's just like the first, I guess, first taste of like weird stuff other than like the beginning.
yeah.
But
And
like I
it's
like
interesting because
like going through like the going through these early episodes, it's like, oh yeah, there are some like fantasy elements and stuff. But go ahead.
hmm yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people liked early Berserk because it really made the fantasy, and even like in a way that's changed, but I think like in context it's not a bad thing at all, and in fact it's better. But long story short, like early Berserk, it had this you could tell there was like fantastical elements, mystical elements, but they were like really like subtle, and people really like that because somebody might like mention a rumor of a dragon, which is like, that's clearly not dragons. They're like, like, oh, I have elf dust that heals any wounds. It's like that's kind of weird, but there's no elves, that's for sure. But you do get Zod, right? You get Zod, and it's like, okay, so something's a little weird here, and that's actually one thing I kind of think the anime did really smart, right?
Yeah,
Because and this kind of covers all parts of it. You know how I noticed I said to skip some stuff? Well, you don't know what's coming. And in a way that's kind of goes against what I think the point of the author made, because knowing what's coming is kind of an interesting take and like really cool. But since you don't know what's coming, you see Zod and you're like, whoa, hold up. Like, what is this leading to? Like, what is the story? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can tell that it's gonna something. It's leading to some stuff. Like, there's definitely more to what it seems.
Could you
We can agree
imagine
on that.
like could you imagine like if it came out like if Berserk was like in its early stages and you had people just kind of like doing these theories and stuff now, like if it came out in like the YouTube area and
Yeah.
had somebody be like, "What's going on?"
Who is Zod and why did he talk about the Behelit on
Yeah.
Griffith's neck? It's like, what? Oh my goodness, what is this?
It turns
No, I
out
agree.
it turns out that the commander, that the soldier is Goku.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's the most interesting thing about part one is it really builds up this world, and I think we can both agree the world of Berserk is really interesting. Like, you know, we don't have like a map well, actually, I think we have got a map, but we don't have like, you know, we don't have everything laid out for us. There's still a lot of mystery, but like the kingdoms and the like conflict and strife, this like, you know, socioeconomic, political, you know, fancy words there. It's really well developed in the world, and you can feel, you know, you can tell like, oh my goodness, this isn't just like some stupid fantasy world where heroes going to the center of the world. No, like the world is its own entity. You know, it's its own character, and it grows in itself. I think we can. I think we can both agree on that. Yeah, I think we'll leave people to like go and watch episode 1 through 14 right now if they want to before they watch part two to get some context. And we'll because like spoiler alert in part two we're gonna go ahead and talk about some stuff we didn't want to talk about in part one. That's gonna, you know, spoil some scenes. But you know, I will say this: the last thing I want to talk about is like the thing Guts talks to at the end of episode 14. Let me see if I can find the exact quote here. But I'll just paraphrase it. The biggest message in Port One of Berserk, the biggest scene to me, right, was when Guts is kind of talking about his ideology, because you know, in a sense, ideology, people's ideas, people's meanings, is really important to Berserk, right? So why does Guts do what he? Why is Guts like he is, right? I mean, we talked about earlier, like, you know, because it was, you know, the trauma from growing up and like not you know, the world's not the best world to live in, obviously, but you know, you get to that and it's like, so this guy probably is not the most well, you know, he probably doesn't have the brightest worldview. And in a sense, that's correct when we get his worldview on the top of that hill, right? But I think Guts as a character is actually a much more like human character than any like hero from like a big manga or something I've ever seen. And the reason
Yeah.
for that, right, is because when he asks why does he fight? When asked that question, it's simply because I can, because I have to live. You know, there's a lot of chivalry, right? In medieval times, you know, like people wouldn't want to fight a fight that was like too easy. Like they wouldn't throw dust in somebody's eyes. They wouldn't kick a man while he's down because they're chivalric and they're better than that. But that's a lie. That's not true. This is war, right? This is
Right.
conflict. Guts doesn't hide from what he is. He accepts who he is. And I think that is why Guts is like this, especially as we'll see going in further in the manga. That's why Guts is like the most human character and one of the best characters, in my opinion, like written ever. Because his idea, you know, he sticks to what he is. He is him, and he has flaws, but that's okay. I think his ideology is genius. What do you think?
So basically, just the ideology mean like I fight to live, basically.
Like he doesn't sugarcoat what he is. He doesn't try to hide behind any falsehoods. He is who he is, and he's gonna do whatever he has to live. Not
Right.
because it's good, not to do good, not to do evil, but because that is his life.
Yeah, I feel like it's difficult like for a person, I guess, with the way he came up to kind of like really see anything else. But I think he sees something when he sees Griffith, and that, you know, of course, that factors in what happens in the future of the like towards part two and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's very understandable, and it's very I guess it's very fresh compared to like people like even today we still put on these airs, and on them now we're a little bit more. I feel like science, so like sociology and psychology. Of course, we started to like learn how to deal with like, okay, these more toxic parts of ourselves, or more or less sugary, um pristine parts of ourselves and stuff like that, and learn how to like kind of accept them and kind of grow from that point, instead of like just
Hmm.
trying to you know what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, no, I get you.
it is refreshing. I think that shows a shine of maturity from him at that point. And well, not a mature, I won't say maturity, but I guess that makes him more able to learn. I don't know. I kind of got lost in my thoughts, but
I got you. That happened. Well, I think I'll say this. I'll say this to kind of keep the momentum going, right? As a podcaster, I'm playing. I think that's okay because the main, when you're reading Berserk, it should make you consider and think about things. I think that's really like obviously it's this cool action manga about a cool guy, Berserk man, big sword, go boom, right? But I mean, that's such a surface level thought. It seems like I said, chapter 22 when he's on the hill talking to Casca, right?
mhm,
Um, as long as I have this, I'm confident I can survive any battle. He's talking about his sword, right? Right, and
yeah.
he's like, I don't want to die and he's like, but just because I don't want to die, just because I don't know more than how, or just because I didn't know more than how to use this, I kept fighting battles. That's such a simple but beautiful thing, right? Because I mean, like that, I could probably spend an hour just talking about what that means, right? Like why, like on the surface level, it's like, oh, he's just a guy fighting battles with his sword because that's all he knows. Well, yes, that's exactly what it is. But what is that like? Oh my goodness, that is such a big impact. Like again, he doesn't hide anything. And sorry, I'm gushing over. I'm fanboying.
Uh,
Anyway, basically, take some time as you're reading Berserk to think about things. Is what I'm saying.
I got you. I mean, that's good. That's what good art's supposed to do.
It's kind of like I've been reading Good Night Pun Pun. If you haven't seen it, read it. It's really
Mm-mm.
sad, but it's really good.
Well, check it out.
Anyways.
Check it out.
But no,
I'll put it on my ever growing list of sauce.
ever growing list of stuff I'm going to tell you to watch, and you don't have time to read. Well, in this case, read. But so to I think to kind of close on part one, right? I think the biggest thing about Berserk that I can tell people as like the veteran reader, right, is about part one of Berserk is that you're introduced to this world against your expectations at the beginning, and as you continue to see this, you see the growth of characters as like family, or going from like strangers to family. That's a really good impact, I think. But you also see the growth of some of the main characters, like as they learn to accept things, as they grow grow as a human. Biggest idea, but also things become cooler. There's a lot of action, and there's a little mystery as far as like mystical elements, like demons and like fairies and stuff that you don't really see except with Zod. But you kind of go like, wow, this is pretty cool. So basically, Golden Age is really good, and the beginning of Berserk is really good, and it really only gets better.
No shit.
Any last any last comments from you?
I thought you would go threaten me. Any last words? But
Any last
yeah.
words? Sorry, you can't finish this.
But yeah, yeah. I mean, you pretty much wrapped it up, put it in a nice bow. I don't know. We might fade out. We might awkwardly leave this bit in.